European sauropods. Welcome guys, once again to the channel Ranking with Dinosaurs, where we rank, you guessed it, dinosaurs. And today we're going to be following up with the series of, sauropods across the world, across the continents. And today we're going to be landing in Europe. Now, one thing in my, my research is that Europe is not very known for having, the most impressive sauropods. And there are some, well-known ones, but I wouldn't call them impressive. However, there are some exceptions, and there are some, cool little details about, some European sauropods that we're going to be discussing them in each entry. So, without further ado, we're going to be starting with Ampelosaurus. So, we're going to be starting with Ampelosaurus, a titanosaurian from late Cretaceous in France. Ampelosaurus being, I'm so sorry, being the most well-known dinosaur from this country. Pretty standard, I would say, for a sauropod. I actually have a Ampelosaurus figure right here. You can see, a long neck, very long tail, and it also carried one of the cool features about Ampelosaurus is that it had these dermal armor in the form of osteoderms. You can see them right here on top of the back. These range from 25 to 28 centimeters long. And they had three distinct morphology. So you had the plate-like ones, which I don't know if you can see them, but they're much more on the sides, much more, plate-like, as the name would imply. And you can see the bulb ones, which are, look like pebbles, or the spine-like ones, which are these ones on top of their backs. The actual arrangement, we don't know it yet, so interpretations vary from artist to artist. Again, this was on the larger side actually for European sauropods. This is a 50-foot animal, and weighs around 8 tons, if I remember correctly. And there's a ton of fossil material from Ampelosaurus. A lot of it has been assigned to different genuses throughout the years, but we still have a ton of Ampelosaurus that we know of, including recently a disarticulated skull. This skull, again, it is based on some fragments of previous fossils, but the actual new skull that we have, which is very much almost complete, it hasn't been described yet, so we don't know what it'll actually look like. Probably this will get updated, the actual look of the skull. So that's pretty cool news to look forward to. It did live in an island environment again, but this guy actually didn't present any insular dwarfism. When animals do get smaller in islands, but no, this guy still stayed relatively huge. So, Ampelosaurus, I like it. It's one of those, OG dinosaurs that we know from back in the day. So, I think I'm going to put it in A tier. Yeah, A tier for Ampelosaurus. LOURINHASAURus. Now, this guy is actually from the late Jurassic, so we're going a little bit back in time. Late Jurassic strata of Portugal. So, this guy has actually been through a lot of controversy. Some of the specimens previously assigned to LOURINHASAURUS have actually been assigned to separate genuses like DINHAEROSAURUS, which is much different from this one. This guy is a macronarian, a very large macronarian, which was very closely related to Camarasaurus. Now, if you remember Camarasaurus, it was one of my favorite sauropods from North America. Basically, because it has I feel like it's the brawler of the sauropods. This guy was throwing hands with some of the ruthless predators that were alive during that time. And as we will see later, a lot of late Jurassic European fauna looks eerily similar, very similar to North American late Jurassic. So that's one of the the cool things about these particular animals, is that they do have their this could be, you know, the representative of Camarasaurus in Europe specifically. Now, there are a couple key differences. There are some very, you know, technical that I don't want to, you know, get it too much into it because it's not my job. But some of the things definitely is that this I believe the sacral neural spines right here are actually much taller in LOURINHASAURUS, and that the humerus and femur, I believe, are higher lengthwise, giving a much more like upright position, like verticalized posture. So while this guy is a little bit sloped towards the front, I guess LOURINHASAURUS would hold its neck much higher, much upright. I think that's what I can gather from LOURINHASAURUS. Again, it has been through a lot of revisions, so I don't have that much of an attachment as much as Camarasaurus, but I'll give it its flowers. I'll go put it in B tier. CETIOSAURUS, or CETIOSAURUS. In Spanish, it's CETIOSAURUS, so I'll just call it CETIOSAURUS. This is a Middle Jurassic sauropod, and in 1892, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 1892. This was the first sauropod dinosaur that was described from actual bones, and is the most complete sauropod found in England. It may have been also a lot. We may have some material as well from other parts of Europe, like I believe France, and Germany. While being a sauropod compared to other ones, this guy actually had a much shorter neck and a relatively much shorter, well, not for this guy, but compared to other sauropods, a shorter tail, still pretty long for CETIOSAURUS. On the other hand, it did have very long forelimbs. So, you know, that's one way to, you know, differentiate it from other ones. Another thing is that it was pretty huge. This guy maxed out at 60 feet and, you know, weighed 11 tons. So, you know, pretty heavy. Why was it so heavy? Well, the vertebral bones from this guy were actually very heavily built, with very limited air chambers, which means, you know, it was much, I would say, heavier and relative to its size compared to other sauropods, because unlike the much more extremely hollowed out vertebrae from later sauropods like Brachiosaurus and all of that, again, this guy is a bit more primitive, so it still didn't have that specialized, you know, air chambers. They still had it, but not as developed as later sauropods. So CETIOSAURUS, very important in, you know, European sauropod history. We're gonna put it in A tier. EUROPASAURUS. Now, this guy's a basal macronarian. This is a late Jurassic in northern Germany, and this guy is the prime example of insular dwarfism. We touched it a little bit with AMPELOSAURUS, which was not an example, but this guy is an actual tiny sauropod from an island. Now, this was a result of a sauropod population, which was in an island in, again, this is in northern Germany, and inside this basin, which is called the Lower Saxony Basin. Again, tiny sauropod. It only measured 20 feet and weighed like 1,800 pounds. So very small. We're not talking about the huge ones. Like, Ampelosaurus is not one of the biggest sauropods, but to put it into perspective, you know, 8 tons against 1,800 pounds. That is not very big. And these are adults, again. So I don't know if we could maybe ride some EUROPASAURUS. It would be so awesome. It is very debated, like, where these guys actually are placed in the tree in Sauropoda. Some people put it inside Brachiosauridae. You know, they have some very similar traits. Others put them right outside Brachiosauridae. What we do have is a wide assortment of different fossils and specimens, specifically from different ages. So we actually have a pretty good understanding of the growth rate, and how they changed ontogenetically while they were growing up. So Europasaurus, actually have a soft spot for Europasaurus. Tiny sauropods are adorable and are so cool. So I think I'm gonna put Europasaurus in the A. I think I'm gonna put an S tier. Honestly, I love Europasaurus. I am gonna put an S tier. TURIASAURUS. Now, I said that Europe is not known for having huge sauropods. Well, TURIASAURUS is an exception, a big exception. This guy is known from a single specimen found in Spain in the Villar del Arzobispo formation, and it is believed to be the largest dinosaur to ever roamed Europe. That's how important TURIASAURUS is. Recent estimates actually put it at 98 feet, almost 100 feet, and a weight of 50 tons. That is gargantually humongous. One of the funniest things I found about TURIASAURUS is that a paleontologist on record said that their skull, the reason for having such a tiny skull, was actually because it was any little bit larger, it would actually break its neck. That's pretty funny. But apparently it's true. So not as funny for TURIASAURUS having a baby head, but yeah, I believe it's in 2009, or I could be wrong about that. There was a study saying that TURIASAURUS is exceptional because it actually shows that extreme gigantism in sauropods is not a trait only for Diplodocids and Titanosaurians. It was an independent thing that happened because, TURIASAURUS is not a neosauropod. It's much more basal. So, it's pretty cool that we see not only huge sauropods, in the after, in Neosauropoda, which is, as I said, your big Diplodocus, your big Apatosaurus, your later Titanosaurians, Argentinosaurus, all of that. But, sauropods did want to get big from the start. It's just that, some of them had to, go through more, they had to wait a little bit more. So, TURIASAURUS, honestly, pretty awesome. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I don't know if I would like it as more as Europasaurus, which means I am gonna leave it like this, actually. Magyarosaurus, the Hungarian lizard, which, funnily enough, is found in Romania, of all places. It is a late Cretaceous Maastrichtian sauropod. Not only a sauropod, a dwarf sauropod. Again, is a case of insular dwarfism, and Megalosaurus is very known, famously known for being one of the smallest fully grown adult sauropods. Less than 10 feet long, like 9.8, 9.7, something like that, and is found to be closely related to another small sauropod, but much more to the south, Rapitosaurus from Madagascar. And the actual remains of Megalosaurus are actually go way back. We actually known about Megalosaurus since 1895. At least 10 individuals are assigned to this genus. We known of Magyaro for a pretty long time, and it's also notable because it had the presence of those that dermal armor we were talking about with AMPELOSAURUS. Though even it was showed some of the histological analysis that this guy had a reduced growth rate, so they were growing relatively slow. It still had a high metabolic rate, which means that this was a very active sauropod, which, makes sense. It was much smaller, so it had less mass to go around. And yes, I did say late Maastrichtian Romania, so yes, it did live in the hellhole that is Hattig Island. So it did have to survive in that godforsaken island. So Megalosaurus, I love Megalosaurus. I am tempted to put an S tier, but do I like it more? I'm gonna do a little shift here. So I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower CETIOSAURUS. I'm gonna lower EUROPASAURUS, and I think I like Magyarosaurus more than EUROPASAURUS. Sorry about all this shifting, guys. It's just I don't necessarily plan where I'm gonna put him before, so I'm doing this actively while I'm doing the tier list. LUSOTITAN. Now, to end the tier list, we're gonna be in the late Jurassic with LUSOTITAN. This is a Brachiosaurid from Portugal and possibly Spain, a large sauropod. This guy reached 69 feet, nice, and 30 tons in body mass. So, big boy, again. This is a Brachiosaurid, which means it was closely related to Brachiosaurus, much more than you would think. It had long forearms, with humerus and femurs actually measuring 6.7 feet. 6.7 feet long. So, very tall, again, like Brachiosaurus. And it lived in the Lourinia Formation, which was also home to other sauropods, specifically Lourinasaurus, which we talked about earlier, and Dinosaurus, which is another one. A much more, I think it's a diplodocid. I cannot remember. I think Dinosaurus is like the equivalent to Diplodocus. But yeah, this region was a very, coastal region, strong marine influence. And this is the largest dinosaur that's been discovered in this area, LUSOTITAN, which is the equivalent, again, of Brachiosaurus from North America in Europe, which would be also the equivalent of Giraffatitan from Tanzania. So I love this. I honestly love this, like this same fauna, different environment in different continents. I don't know why. I just think it's so awesome. It's so interesting and so cool. So, like, specifically from these formations, Brachiosaurus, Giraffatitan, and LUSOTITAN, I love them. I don't know. Something about them being in, like, 3 different places. Obviously having different names because they're different genuses. Sick. So, I'm sorry. LUSOTITAN is going to be S tier. I have seen... It did show up in the latest Walking with Dinosaurs documentary, but I haven't seen it yet. I haven't heard good things, so let me know in the comments if it's any good. That is going to be the tier list, guys. We come to the end of the continents. Well, not really. Still, I think one more. But yes, this like continental sauropod journey has been so awesome. I really like touching each different sauropod from their different continents, different time periods in each continent. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do a like the best the best sauropods from each continent. I'll do a tier list of those. But again, there's still a ton of other sauropods I haven't talked about from the previous continents, and same thing with from Europe. So let me know how you make your tier list. Which is your favorite European sauropod? If I missed some, let me know in the comments. If you want to see them in another tier list. How you can help the channel, please like. It helps a ton. Subscribe helps even more. So I'm going to see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.